Guys, how are you?
Doing good.
I wanted to call you guys in today because this is the time of year where college students are just getting their grades, and sometimes those aren't so pretty, right? And a lot of us have been in the position where you come home after you just get your grades. And of course, it's right around the holidays, makes it super awkward with your family. And I just want to talk to you guys about this, about like what it's like to come home with your tail between your legs. So, first of all, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Nathan Weinberg. I am a mentor here at Untapped Learning and also do most of the video production and social media and all that stuff. So
I'm Tyler Slade. I oversee our student athlete program here at Untapped.
Yeah. And I'm Brandon Slade. I'm the founder. And we've all been in a position where you struggle, you have to come back home. So, Nathan, walk me through yours. What happened and what was it like coming home for break?
yeah, so I mean, I got through a full year. I mean, I was definitely struggling during my winter break, but I didn't drop out of school until after that spring semester. But even during winter break, I had already a lot of anxiety around feeling like I had picked the wrong major, and in my head that was like, now I'm in it for life, which is not the case.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And so when you came back home, did you share like that you didn't have the best academic semester with your family?
Oh yeah, for sure. My dad has been in academics as long as I've been alive. He was a professor, and now he's at Denison University, so he's someone I can always go to talk to and has a ton of good advice on this subject. So.
And how'd your family take it? Were they like frustrated with you? What did that look like?
Yeah, there's different aspects, but they weren't frustrated at me at all. It was more just, worried, I think, and wanting to be able to support and not knowing exactly how that looked at the time. So, it was a process for us to go through together, but by me being able to have that little bit of self-reflection and start to get a little bit of clarity around where I need to go from here, that's really what they're, were stoked about. I mean, that's what they wanted to see.
Well, what a fortunate situation from a family just to help you see where you're at and not get frustrated.
Yeah,
because I'm sure that took some of the load off for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to know what to do. Most parents, I would assume, don't know. I think no parents know exactly what to do. It doesn't matter if you're a college professor or not.
Yeah. Tyler, walk us through your situation.
Yeah, so for me, I was trying to balance football with academics, and I was the typical student where it was like, football season will end before finals. I'll be able to pull up all my grades through the final projects and tests. Like I just need to get 110% on everything that I'll pass. So that was kind of how mine went. Was I was like, I'll take care of it later. And then later came, and it was too late at that point.
And so when you got back on the plane to fly back to Colorado from Ohio, did you know what your grades were going to be?
I was pretty sure what they were going to be. I almost didn't take that flight home because of that. But there was a few that were questionable that I was like, I maybe have a chance. But there was a handful where I was like, there's no way unless this teacher really does me a favor. So
yeah, and that comment of do I even take this flight home, I think is how a lot of us feel, and probably a lot of people watching are feeling right now as well. It's like, do I even do this, or do I just find a new family to go home with for breaks? Did you know when you were going home, or was it like or was it a surprise that you're going to fail some of these classes?
No, I knew. I knew because of I knew how I had performed on the test. It was kind of beyond repair. I mean, I definitely knew it was overwhelming and kind of just frozen. Like not knowing where to go next.
Did you have that anxiety getting on the plane and going home? Like were you like, should I just not do this?
Yeah, I would say it was like a mixture of denial and like overwhelm.
So denial is what I experienced. That denial piece you spoke to is huge, because I was like, I think I did fine. I didn't do fine, right? And so, were you ready after that semester to start to take feedback yet from other people and even from yourself? Were you ready to start to look at what went wrong? Start with you, Ty.
No, I think I was just like, I know what I did. I was just being lazy. I've got it next semester. Things are totally different. When in reality, I was just totally lacking a group of skills that I needed, and there was people hinting at that, and some people just directly telling me, and I was like, no, I got myself here. I'm fine. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be okay.
I was just a football player, and when
Yeah.
football season's on, like
Yeah.
I'll have all straight
Exactly.
A's, right?
Yeah.
Were you in a high level of denial after the semester?
Yeah, on the grades and just on where I was at in terms of like my where I wanted to go, kind of the lack of goals and also lack of executive functioning
Mhm.
skills if I had said goals.
Yeah.
So-
if I even had a goal, I didn't know how to reach that
Nah.
goal, right? Well, so tell me about that first time you came home from college. We talked about like the denial on the plane. Like, what was that like? Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had some level of understanding from my parents because they are, they deal with a lot of college kids in their day to day. But both my older sister never really struggled in college, so it was the first time they had to kind of work with their child to make a plan B. But before that even happened, it was just like take a deep breath and kind of level expectation, and get all of that negative self-talk out of your head about how everyone else did better than you, and just kind of bring it real close.
Yeah, that's a great insight. And the other question I had too is a lot of times, like on the plane ride home, we build up this like, my parents gonna like whoop my tail, right?
Yeah.
What was it like when you had that first conversation? Was it at the dinner table? Was it yelling, screaming?
I honestly don't even know, but yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a level of disappointment, right? Like
Yeah.
your parents want their kids to succeed. So, and that doesn't feel good to feel like you disappointed someone,
Yeah.
And I also remember being like, gosh, I just don't want to waste money. I remember like really thinking about that financial piece a lot, which is just not what I should have been thinking about, but that's what I was focused on, like going into it. And I kind of came out of it realizing like, okay, there's a bunch of different paths I can take, but I just have to figure out an idea of what I want to do.
Yeah. Great insights. What was it like for you coming home? Like, what was like the actual day to day? Because I think people are building this up in their head a little bit. What was it like for you?
Yeah, the conversation wasn't great when I finally had it, but the build up and putting off, like anything else, the longer you put off something, the worse it gets and the more you hype it up in your head. So I think that was the hard thing for me I was like, when's the right time to do this? There's not really a right time. Like, same thing. I wasted all this money, but also I wasted all this time, and they're going to think I was just messing around the whole time. So I think a lot of it was just like, you hype things up so much, and it's like pulling the Band-Aid. You just gotta get it done and go deal with what you gotta deal with.
How long did you put off the conversation for?
Like a day or two before I was heading back to school.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most parents know way quicker now.
I think they knew. They were waiting for me to come out and say it.
What advice would you give someone who they're like, I know this is going to be rough. I know my mom is going to cry. But what advice would you give looking back?
I think one, obviously just addressing it right away. Just being like, here's what happened and here's why I think it happened. But I think the other thing too is just like being open to the feedback that they'll give and just like working through the process with them of like, why do you think this was? Or like, what were the one or two things that you could have done differently to make like avoid this in the future? And I think having that conversation earlier gives you time to think about it, gives you time to adjust and figure out like, where are my weaknesses and where do I need to like really step up my game next semester to hit it strong? Yeah.
I have so much to say about that, but I want to ask Nathan first. What advice would you give to someone who's returning home and it's going to be a hard conversation?
Yeah, just take like a little bit of accountability. I think that's the most important thing. And you might not know how much accountability there is to be taken. And there's a lot of different pieces that, hopefully your parents can help work through with you, but just being like, upfront about it and just not beating around the bush and just saying, I don't feel proud. I'm just bummed in myself, but I'm also like really wanting to figure out how to do this better.
Yeah. Well, and you guys spoke to something that's important, that you guys are older now. You're a few years out of college. I'm way out of college, but like, I don't know if I received great advice on putting in the work before the conversation.
Mhm.
So on the plane or the drive, if you live close to home, or going, a day before, actually thinking about what went wrong and how you are going to fix, or what are you are going to propose to fix it.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of us just go into the conversation defensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's like, why didn't you do well? It's like, this is your fault. For
Yeah.
some reason, we get super defensive. So taking the time beforehand to really think about and be as honest as you can with yourself, what went wrong and what can I do next semester? Because if you've actually thought about this and you're proposing solutions that could actually be helpful, that conversation is going to be completely different. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be a very different conversation.
Yeah, it is a different conversation, quite literally. Yeah, I mean, if you can hop to that step, and you don't have to know. It's just brainstorming, right? At that point, I mean, you might not know everything that went wrong, but if you can just pick a couple things,
That's
goes
that.
a long way.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because when you're in it, rarely do you actually know, and then
Yeah.
when you're out of it, you're like, oh, this is what I was doing. So you guys both said you were in denial. You come back, it's awkward. Was the next semester better for you?
Well, in my case, no. When my first semester was rough, and then my second semester was even rougher, and then that's when I took time off, and when I came back, it got better. But
So I want to ask a question about what because I think
Yeah.
this is important, because most of us come back and we're in denial. We're like, we got this second semester. And 9 out of 10 people I hear in this conversation, they fight with their parents, they win the fight, so they can go back to school, and then it gets even rougher. Is that your situation?
Yeah.
Is that your situation as well?
Exactly. Yeah, I was like, this semester, as you mentioned earlier, like, oh, I'm not in season. Like, I've got so much more free time, which, as we know, if you don't structure that free time, tends to work against you. So I was the exact same way, and then I ended up getting asked to leave.
Well, and so you have to hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
I know something that we're all passionate about, why we work with these students who come back, is so they don't have to hit rock bottom.
Right.
So I guess my question is, what advice would you give to yourself in that situation, coming home after just one rough semester, so you didn't need to hit rock bottom? What advice would you give to yourself?
I think the biggest thing, as I mentioned, is just like being willing to accept help. And like, I know you say this a lot, and we say this a lot with our students, like the most successful people tend to have the most help. So like being open-minded of like, even if I was able to turn it around on my own, somebody else who has more knowledge in that space and also has like a step back, so they can like, when you're in the middle of it, you think you're doing one thing, but in reality, like I'm studying so hard and I'm being really smart about it. And then someone else sees it and it's like, you're really not, right? So I think the biggest thing is like finding my resources and being open to using them, and not being like defensive or thinking there's anything wrong with me. It's just, I'm just pushing myself and trying to find those gaps that I need to fill.
That is very well said. The most successful people have the most help, and it opens up so much mental freedom. And when you are in the heat of this, you think you're going to out willpower it. You're like, if I just wake up at 6 a.m. every day, like I'll go out with my friends at 4, but I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and I'll get ripped at the gym and I'll study and this and that. And it just doesn't work like that. Structure and accountability really works. And it's hard to admit that there's something wrong with you. And there's really not anything that's wrong with you. The most successful people have the most help. So
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to yourself?
I mean, I agree. Literally, just as you were saying that, I was like, you know what? This is going to be better if you go like that. So it's always better to admit your mistakes and learn from them than to stare at them and let them continue. But I mean, I would have told myself that it wasn't the academics necessarily. I was having issues with basic self-care, and that was really like almost made it impossible to be able to show up the way that I wanted to. And then when you put kind of the overwhelming, first year of college on top of that, it was really tough. But yeah, I would have just told myself like slow down and kind of peel back the onion a little bit. And yeah, that requires asking for help. You can't do that on your own. I couldn't. So
I'm going to close it up with this, because you guys are both now successful professionals with college degrees. All of us took the long way around, but turns out it worked out okay. So if a parent is watching this, what would you tell them if their kid just came home and bombed?
I think the first thing is just being open to listening. Like, I think we see this all the time with parents, is it's immediate. they were lazy, they were just partying and all this stuff. And there might be some truth to that, right? But I think a lot of students, if you really like give them that safe space where they can open up, I think it's a lot like what you said, because I had a lot of the same things, right? I wasn't sleeping right.
Mhm.
I wasn't like doing, the things that I needed to take care of myself personally.
Mhm.
So even when I was actually putting in the time, I wasn't focused and I wasn't getting that. And I think that just by looking at my grades, you would have never guessed that was the issue. So just giving the open floor and then being like, how can we work together to fix this versus like putting blame? It's like, this sucks. It happened. Like you need to own that, but also like, we can't have this happen again. What are we going to do together to adapt to make sure this doesn't happen anymore?
It's great. Yep. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with what you said. I think that taking accountability and just trying to, the student taking accountability and just trying to be open-minded and listen to them, you'll probably hear a lot of stuff that maybe you've not heard from your child before, so it can be a chance to connect with them, and then you'll have a better idea of how to support them, and then you can work on them learning to support themselves through that.
What turned it around for you academically? So closing it up, what turned it around for you? How did you go from bombing semesters to finishing with a college degree and figuring it out?
Yeah, so I just took a little bit of time when I dropped out of school after the first year. Essentially, I looked through all the degrees that they had, and I picked like my top 3 that just sounded interesting. And I went and looked for internships for them. It was during the summer. So then I found an internship for one of them, and it was geography. I didn't ever have any experience in geography, but that's how I found something that I really love to do. And I was able to do it, in a real world environment where I was learning it.
Yeah, and you spoke to taking a break from school. Sometimes,
absolutely.
Sometimes we just need a break, and other times too, from a neuropsych perspective, that frontal lobe has to mature. Sometimes a little bit of that maturity, and that's really scary as a parent because you don't know if your kid's going back or not.
Mhm.
But taking some time off just may be needed until they're ready for it,
Right.
and it usually works itself out if you do the right things.
Right.
What would you tell yourself?
So what really helped me, same thing, I took some time off, which obviously helped, but I purposely built a schedule that made it very inconvenient for me to go home during the day and give me free time. So I had like a morning class that forced me to get up and going, and I put like a 2 to 3 hour gap. So I was like, well, I might as well just go to the gym and then get an hour study in. And then I had another 2 to 3 hour gap. So I was like, well, I might as well just stay on campus and study. So like I really forced that structure of like, how do I make it easy to do the right things and hard to do the wrong things? And that's where I really was able to like turn that corner.
It's awesome. So helpful. I wish I would have heard something like this before I was coming home. So yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us. If you need extra help, untappedlearning.com. We work on this all the time with college students. Please reach out, untappedlearning.com. Let us know if you need any help. And thank you all so much.